The transport ship landed on Station Vega 7 with a loud hiss. The doors opened, and bright white light flooded inside. Park stood up from her seat and grabbed her small bag. Her heart was beating fast. This was the day she had waited for since she was a little girl watching ships fly over her village on the Korean Peninsula colony. She walked down the ramp with 40 other new recruits. Most of them were not human. They stood almost 7 feet tall with thick scales covering their bodies. Their eyes were yellow, and they moved like soldiers even before training began. They were thin and fast with silver skin that seemed to change color in the light. They whispered to each other in their clicking language and looked at the humans with something like pity. There were only 5 humans in this group, was the smallest of them all. She stood at 5 feet 4 inches. Her black hair was cut short because the recruitment officer told her long hair was not practical. Her hands were rough from years of working in her family's repair shop back home. A loud voice broke through the noise of the landing bay. "Line up now." Moved quickly. She had learned that when someone with authority spoke, you listened. The other recruits formed a long line, found herself standing between a massive male and a female who kept looking at her like she was an insect. The voice belonged to Drill Sergeant. He walked down the line slowly. His scales were the color of copper that had been polished until it shined. His uniform was perfect. Every button was in place. Every crease was sharp. He carried himself like a warrior who had seen 100 battles and won them all. He stopped in front of each recruit. He looked at them with approval. He nodded at them with respect. But when he reached the humans, his face changed. His yellow eyes became cold. He stopped in front of. "Name," he said. It was not a question, it was a command. "Private Park, Drill Sergeant." He looked down at her for a long moment. She was so small compared to him. The top of her head barely reached his chest. "Human," he said the word like it tasted bad in his mouth. "From the Korean colony. Your species joined the coalition only 40 years ago. My people have been warriors for 3,000 years. They have served for 2,000. And you think you can stand beside us?" Kept her eyes forward. She did not answer because she knew he did not want an answer. Moved on, but felt his words sink into her chest like stones dropping into water. The first week was hard. The training schedule started at 500 hours and did not end until 2,200 hours. They ran. They climbed. They crawled through mud and sand and things that did not want to think about. They barely seemed tired. They complained but kept moving. The humans suffered. One human, a tall man from the European sector named James, dropped out on the 3rd day. He could not keep up. 2 more followed by the end of the week. That left only and one other human. His name was. He was from the same colony as though they had never met before. Was taller than and stronger, but he was kind. He shared his water when ran out during a long march. He helped her climb a wall that was too high for her short arms to reach. He never complained about having to slow down for her. "Why do you help me?" asked him one night in the barracks. The other recruits were already sleeping. Their snores filled the room like strange music. Shrugged, "We humans have to stick together. Nobody else will look out for us." He was right. The other species did not hate the humans. They simply did not notice them. To the end, humans were background noise. They were small and weak and would probably wash out before real training even began. Weapons training started in the 2nd week. This was what had been waiting for. She had never fired a plasma rifle before, but she had taken apart every piece of equipment in her family's shop. She understood machines. She understood how things worked. The coalition gave each recruit a standard-issue plasma rifle. It was a simple weapon, point and shoot. The power cell lasted for about 200 shots before it needed to be replaced. Noticed immediately that her rifle was different from the others. The metal was scratched and dull. The power cell housing was loose. When she checked the serial number, she saw that this weapon was almost 15 years old. The recruits had rifles that looked brand new. She raised her hand. Problem, Private Park. His voice was sharp. Drill Sergeant, this rifle appears to be older than standard issue. The power cell housing is damaged and may cause malfunctions. Walked over to her. He took the rifle from her hands and looked at it for exactly 2 seconds. This rifle is fine, he said. Perhaps you simply do not know how to use it. That would not surprise me. Humans are not known for their skill with weapons. He handed the rifle back to her and walked away. During the first firing exercise, his rifle jammed 3 times. Each time, she had to stop and clear the malfunction while the other recruits kept shooting. Each time, watched her with cold satisfaction. Her final score was the lowest in the battalion. Pathetic, announced to everyone. The human cannot even maintain her weapon. This is why your species does not belong here. You are weak, you are slow, you are worthless. Stood at attention. She did not cry, she did not argue, she simply stood there and let his words wash over her. But inside something was changing. Something hard and cold was forming in her chest. It felt like anger, but it was quieter than anger. It was more patient. That night, after everyone else was asleep, sat on her bunk with her rifle in her lap. She took it apart piece by piece. She studied every component. She found the loose coupling that caused the jams. She found the worn firing pin that reduced accuracy. She found a dozen other small problems that should have been fixed years ago. Woke up and saw her working. "What are you doing?" he whispered. "Learning," said. "They gave us broken weapons because they think we do not matter. They think we will fail." "Will we?" Looked at her friend in the dim light of the barracks. "No," she said, "we will not." She went back to studying the rifle. She memorized every flaw. She would need that knowledge later. She just did not know how much. 3 months passed on Station Vega 7. The days blurred together into one long stream of pain and exhaustion. His body changed. Her arms grew stronger. Her legs could carry her farther. She learned to breathe through the burning in her lungs and keep moving when every part of her wanted to stop. But no matter how much she improved, it was never enough for Drill Sergeant. He watched her like a predator watching wounded prey. Every small mistake became a public lesson. Every stumble became proof that humans did not belong in the coalition military. One morning, inspected the barracks. He walked past the bunks without stopping. He nodded at the bunks with brief approval. Then he reached its corner. Her bed was made perfectly. Her uniform was folded in exact squares. Her boots were polished until they reflected light. She had spent an extra hour making sure everything was correct. Picked up one of her boots. He turned it over slowly. Then he dropped it on the floor. "Dust," he said, "unacceptable." Looked at the boot. There was no dust. The boot was clean. Everyone in the room knew it was clean. "Extra cleaning duty for 1 week," continued. "Perhaps this will teach you the standards expected of coalition soldiers." Saluted, "Yes, Drill Sergeant." She did not argue. Arguing would only make things worse. Found her that evening scrubbing the floors of the mess hall. He knelt down beside her with his own brush. "You do not have to help," said. "I know." They worked in silence for a while. The chemical smell of the cleaning solution burned his nose. Her knees ached from the hard floor. "He is trying to break you," said finally. "He wants you to quit." "I know. Why does he hate us so much?" Sat back on her heels and thought about this question. She had been thinking about it for 3 months. "I do not think he hates us," she said. "I think he is afraid of us." Laughed. "Afraid? He is twice our size. His people have been fighting wars since before humans discovered fire." "Exactly. His people have been the same for thousands of years. Strong, powerful, unchanged. But humans are different. 40 years ago, we could barely travel between our own planets. Now we are here, standing beside species who conquered star systems before we invented the wheel." Picked up her brush and started scrubbing again. "We change too fast. We adapt too quickly. That scares him." Was quiet for a long moment. Then he nodded slowly. Maybe you are right, but knowing why he hates us does not make it easier. No, agreed, it does not. The Combat Simulation Dome was the largest training facility on Station Vega 7. It could create any battlefield from any planet. Jungles, deserts, frozen wastelands, urban ruins. The recruits spent hours inside, learning to fight in conditions they had never experienced. The live fire exercise was scheduled for the end of the 3rd month. This was a major test. Recruits would be graded on accuracy, speed, and decision-making. High scores meant better assignments after graduation. Low scores meant support roles far from any real action. Had been preparing for weeks. She practiced every night after dinner, going through the motions of aiming and firing until her arms memorized the movements. She cleaned her rifle obsessively, trying to prevent the malfunctions that had plagued her since day one. The morning of the exercise, she checked her weapon one final time. The power cell coupling was still loose. She had reported this problem twice through official channels. Both times her request for a replacement was. All recruits to starting positions, the automated voice announced. Took her place in the simulation dome. The environment today was an urban ruin. Broken buildings rose around her. Smoke drifted through the air. The targets would appear from windows, doorways, and rooftops. The horn sounded. The exercise began. Moved through the ruins with her rifle raised. A target appeared in a window to her left. She turned, aimed, and fired. Direct hit. Another target came from behind a wall. She dropped to one knee and fired again. Another hit. For the first 3 minutes, everything went perfectly. Her score was building. She was keeping pace with the other recruits for the first time. Then she felt it, a small vibration in her hands, a slight hesitation in the trigger. No, not now, please not now. A target appeared on a rooftop, aimed and pulled the trigger. Nothing happened. The power cell coupling had failed again. The connection between the cell and the firing chamber was broken. She dropped behind a wall and tried to fix the problem. Her fingers worked fast, trying to reconnect the coupling. But the damage was too severe. The metal was warped from months of use and neglect. The target on the rooftop disappeared, points lost. Another target appeared, tried to fire. The rifle sparked and made a sick whining sound. Then it died completely. She held the useless weapon in her hands and felt something inside her break. Heavy footsteps approached. She knew who it was before she looked up. Stood over her. His yellow eyes were bright with cruel satisfaction. Again, his voice echoed through the dome. The exercise had stopped. Everyone was watching. You dare waste coalition resources with your incompetence. He grabbed the rifle from her hands. His massive fingers closed around it like it was nothing, like she was nothing. This is what happens when you give advanced technology to primitive species, announced to the watching recruits. They do not understand it, they cannot use it, they break it. He turned and threw the rifle with all his strength. It flew across the dome and smashed against the far wall. Pieces scattered across the floor. The barrel bent. The stock shattered. The power cell cracked and leaked blue energy onto the ground. You are dismissed from this exercise, said. Report to sanitation duty. That is all your kind is good for, cleaning up the messes of your betters. Stood at attention, her face showed nothing. Her voice was steady. Yes, drill sergeant. The other recruits filed past her as they returned to the exercise. Some looked at her with pity. Most looked away, tried to catch her eye, but she shook her head slightly. He understood. He moved on. When the dome was finally empty, walked to where her rifle had landed. She knelt on the cold floor and began gathering the pieces. Every screw, every chip, every shard of broken metal. A maintenance worker watched her from the doorway. That weapon is beyond repair, he said. You should request a new one. Did not look up. They will not give me a new one. The worker shrugged and walked away. kept collecting pieces until she had everything. She put them in her pockets, her boots, her uniform. She carried the broken weapon out of the dome like it was something precious. Because she had a plan now. If they would not give her a working weapon, she would build one herself. She just needed to find the right parts. The salvage yard was located in the lowest section of Station Vega 7. Most recruits never went there. There was no reason to. It was just a massive room filled with broken things waiting to be recycled or thrown into space. Had been visiting the salvage yard for weeks. At first, she went just to look. She walked between the piles of discarded technology and studied what she found. Broken ship parts, damaged weapons, obsolete machinery from species she had never heard of. The workers there ignored her. They were too busy sorting materials to care about one small human walking through their domain. On the night after destroyed her rifle, returned to the salvage yard with a purpose. She carried a small bag of tools she had borrowed from the maintenance section. She wore dark clothes that would not show dirt. She had 3 hours before morning roll call. She started looking. The first thing she found was a barrel from a sniper platform. The weapon itself was destroyed beyond repair, but the barrel was still perfect. It was longer than a standard rifle barrel, which meant better accuracy at long distances. It was made from a metal alloy that would not warp from heat. Put it in her bag. Next, she found pieces of armor plating. The armor was cracked and useless for protection, but the metal was exactly what she needed. Alloys could handle extreme temperatures. They would make perfect housing for a power cell. She kept searching. A targeting scope from a damaged reconnaissance drone. 3 focusing crystals from a broken mining laser. Wire bundles from an old communication array. A stock from a weapon she did not recognize, made of a composite material that was both light and strong. By the time she left that night, her bag was full and her mind was racing. She worked in secret. Every night after training, when the other recruits were sleeping or relaxing, disappeared, noticed immediately. "Where do you go?" he asked her on the 3rd night. "I cannot tell you." "Why not?" Looked at her friend. She trusted him more than anyone else on the station, but what she was doing was not exactly against the rules, and it was not exactly allowed either. If she got caught, she did not want him to share the blame. "Please," she said, "just cover for me. Tell them I am in the medical bay or using the latrine. I will explain everything when I am done." Studied her face for a long moment, then he nodded. "Okay, I trust you." "Thank you." The work was harder than expected. She had grown up in a repair shop, fixing machines and equipment for farmers and miners, but those were simple tools. What she was trying to build was a weapon that combined technology from multiple alien civilizations. The first problem was the barrel. The sniper barrel was designed for a completely different firing mechanism. Had to reshape the connection point using a heating tool she had found in the salvage yard. It took her 3 nights just to get the shape right. The second problem was the power cell housing. Standard coalition power cells were designed to fit standard coalition weapons. Was building something that was not standard at all. She used the armor plating to create a new housing that was larger and more stable than anything the coalition produced. The third problem was the targeting system. She had 3 broken scopes that each did different things. One measured distance, one tracked movement, one adjusted for wind and gravity. Spent 6 nights taking them apart and putting them back together until she had one scope that did all 3. Her hands bled from sharp metal edges. Her eyes burned from working in dim light. She slept 3 hours a night and ate ration bars because she did not have time for real meals. During the days, she continued training. She ran, she climbed, she did everything commanded, but now there was fire in her chest. Every insult, every punishment, every cruel look only made her work harder at night. By the 10th night, the weapon was starting to take shape. It did not look like anything the Coalition had ever made. The barrel was too long. The stock was curved in strange ways. The housing was covered in weld marks where different metals had been joined together. But when held it, the weight felt perfect. The grip fit her hand like it had been made for her, because it had been. She had measured every angle, tested every position, adjusted every curve until the weapon was an extension of her own body. The firing mechanism was the last piece. This was where human engineering saved her. Coalition weapons used complex electronic systems to manage power flow from the cell to the barrel. These systems were efficient, but they had many points where things could go wrong. One loose wire or damaged chip, and the whole weapon would fail. Remembered something her grandmother had taught her back on the colony. Before plasma weapons, before energy cells, humans used simple chemical explosives to fire metal projectiles. The mechanisms were basic. A hammer hit a primer. The primer ignited gunpowder. The explosion pushed the projectile through the barrel. Simple, reliable, almost impossible to break. Could not build a chemical weapon, but she could use the same principle. Instead of complex electronics, she created a direct mechanical connection between the trigger and the power cell. When she pulled the trigger, a physical lever completed the circuit. No chips, no software, no fancy technology. Just cause and effect. On the 14th night, the weapon was finished. Held it in her hands and looked at what she had created. It was ugly. The metal was and mismatched. The welds were visible. The stock was slightly asymmetrical. But it was hers, every piece, every connection, every choice. She pointed it at the salvage yard wall and pulled the trigger. The plasma beam cut through 3 inches of hull metal like it was paper. Smiled. It was the first time she had smiled in months. She did not know it yet, but this weapon would change everything. It would make her famous across the Coalition. It would prove that humans were not weak or worthless or primitive. But first, she had to pass one final test. She looked at the weapon in her hands. "You need a name," she said softly. She thought about her grandmother, who had taught her to fix machines when she was young. She thought about her father, who had worked himself to exhaustion so she could have a better life. She thought about every human who had been told they were not good enough, would never be good enough, could never stand beside the great warrior species of the galaxy. She ran her finger along the metal barrel. "I will call you Hope," she decided. It was a simple name, a human name. And soon everyone would know it. Battalion-wide qualifications happen every 6 months. Every recruit knew what this meant. Your scores on this day would follow you for the rest of your military career. High scores meant units, special assignments, respect from your fellow soldiers. Low scores meant supply runs, sanitation details, and a lifetime of being ignored. Had been preparing for this day since she first set foot on Station Vega 7. The morning of qualifications, she woke up 2 hours before everyone else. She sat on her bunk in the darkness and held Hope across her lap. The weapon was wrapped in cloth to hide it from curious eyes. She ran her fingers over the familiar shape and felt the rough metal beneath the fabric. Stirred in the next bunk, he looked at her through sleepy eyes. "Today is the day," he said. "Yes." "Are you ready?" Thought about the question. She had spent 14 nights building this weapon. She had slept less than 50 hours in 2 weeks. Her hands were covered in small scars from sharp metal edges. Her eyes ached from precision work in dim light. "Yes," she said, "I am ready." The qualification range was the largest training facility on the station. It could simulate targets at any distance from 10 meters to 1 kilometer. Targets could be stationary or moving. They could appear from any direction and stay visible for any length of time. The computer controlled everything and kept perfect records of every shot. When arrived with her battalion, she saw that other units were already gathering. Word had spread about today's qualifications. Several senior officers had come to watch, including Station Commander herself. Commander was a female with silver skin that seemed to glow under the range lights. She had served in the Coalition military for over 200 years. Her record was legendary. She watched the arriving recruits with calm, evaluating eyes. Drill Sergeant addressed the battalion before qualifications began. His copper scales gleamed as he walked back and forth in front of the assembled recruits. "Today you will prove yourselves," he said, "or you will prove that you were never worthy of wearing Coalition uniforms. There is no middle ground. There is no excuse for failure." He stopped walking and looked directly at. "The human will demonstrate why her species should never have been admitted to the Coalition. Watch and learn what weakness looks like." Some of the recruits laughed. They exchanged knowing looks. Hands curled into fists at his sides, but he stayed silent. Kept her face blank. She did not react to the insult. She had heard worse from over the past months. These words meant nothing anymore. The recruits lined up in order of their unit numbers. Was near the middle of the line. She watched as recruit after recruit stepped forward, fired at the targets, and received their scores. They performed well. Their scores ranged from 38 to 44 out of 50. They did even better, with most scoring in the mid-40s. The battalion record was 48, held by a scout named who had graduated 3 years ago. When stepped forward, held her breath. Her friend raised his standard-issue rifle and fired with careful precision. His final score was 41, good enough for a respectable assignment. He returned to the line with a small smile. Then it was turn. She stepped forward. The cloth-wrapped weapon was in her hands. His eyes narrowed immediately. "What is that?" "My rifle, Drill Sergeant." "That is not Coalition standard issue. Coalition regulations permit personal weapons for qualification if they pass safety inspection." Kept her voice calm and steady. "I submitted mine 3 days ago. It was approved by Station Commander." A murmur rippled through the crowd. Scales darkened to a deeper copper, which was a sign of anger among his species. He turned to look at Commander. The commander nodded once. "The weapon was inspected. It meets all safety requirements. The recruit may use it." Turned back to. His yellow eyes were burning with barely controlled rage. "Very well," he said. "But when you fail with your own creation. The shame will be entirely yours." Unwrap the cloth. The gasp that went through the crowd was audible. Even Commander leaned forward slightly. Hope looked like nothing the Coalition had ever produced. The barrel was long and the stock curved in strange ways. The housing was covered in weld marks where different metals joined together. The targeting scope sat at an odd angle that somehow looked both wrong and perfectly right. It was ugly, it was brutal, it was unmistakably handmade. And it was beautiful. Raised the weapon to her shoulder. The weight settled against her body like an old friend. The grip fit her palm perfectly. The stock pressed against her shoulder exactly where it should. "Begin when ready," the range computer announced. Took one slow breath. She released it. She focused. The first target appeared. She fired. Direct hit. The second target came from a different direction. She turned, adjusted, fired, hit. The third target hit, the fourth hit, fifth, sixth, seventh. She did not miss. By the 10th target, the range had gone quiet. No one was talking. No one was moving. Every eye was fixed on the small human woman with the strange weapon. By the 20th target, other drill instructors had gathered at the edges of the range. They whispered to each other and pointed at her rifle. By the 30th target, Commander had moved to a better viewing position. Her silver face showed no expression, but her eyes were bright with interest. 35, 36, 37. The targets were getting harder now, moving faster, appearing for shorter times. Some were partially hidden behind obstacles. 40, 41, 42. Her arms did not shake. Her breathing stayed even. Hope felt like part of her body, like an extension of her own will. 45, 46, 47. The crowd was completely silent, could hear her own heartbeat. 48. She had matched the battalion record. 2 targets remained. These were the legendary final targets that almost no one ever hit. They moved at maximum speed. They were partially hidden. They appeared for less than half a second each. In the history of Station Vega 7, only 4 recruits had ever hit both final targets. Waited. The first target appeared, a flash of movement at the edge of her vision. She turned. She fired. Hit. 49. The crowd held its breath. The final target appeared. It was faster than anything had ever seen. It was there and then it was not there. But had already pulled the trigger. Time seemed to slow down. The plasma bolt crossed the range in a straight line of blue light. It struck the target at the exact center. Hit. 50. Perfect score. The silence lasted for 3 heartbeats, then started clapping, then the humans, then slowly even some of the. Lowered her weapon. Her arms were shaking now. Her legs felt weak, but she stood straight and tall as the applause washed over her. She had done it. Now everyone would see what humans could really do. The applause continued for a long time, stood at the firing line with hope still in her hands and let the sound fill her ears. She had imagined this moment many times during those long nights in the salvage yard, but the reality was different from what she had expected. She did not feel proud or victorious. She felt tired, relieved, like she had finally set down a weight she had been carrying for months. Commander raised her hand, and the crowd fell silent. The human private park has achieved a perfect score of 50 out of 50, she announced. Her voice was calm but carried clearly across the range. This is a new station record. The previous record of 48, held for 3 years, has been broken. Another wave of murmuring passed through the gathered soldiers. Breaking a record was rare. Breaking it by 2 points with a weapon built from salvage was something that had never happened before. Continued. Private Park, please present your weapon for examination. Walked forward and held out Hope with both hands. The commander took it carefully, turning it over and examining every surface. Her silver fingers traced the weld marks, the mismatched metals, the strange angles. You built this yourself? Asked. Yes, Commander. From salvage materials? Yes, Commander. Pieces that were going to be recycled or discarded. Looked at the weapon for a long moment, then she looked at. Why? It was a simple question, but understood what the commander was really asking. Why go through all that trouble? Why spend those sleepless nights? Why not just accept the poor equipment and the low scores and the assignments that no one else wanted? Because they told me I could not, said. They gave me broken tools and expected me to fail. I decided to prove them wrong. Nodded slowly. I see. She handed Hope back to and turned to face Drill Sergeant. The Massive had not moved since the final target fell. His scales had gone pale, which was a sign of shock or shame among his people. Drill Sergeant said, I understand you destroyed Private Park's original weapon during a training exercise. His jaw tightened. The weapon was malfunctioning. I removed it from service. You threw it against a wall and told her to report to sanitation duty. Silence stretched across the range. Everyone was watching now. Even the other drill instructors stood frozen. His yellow eyes moved too. For the first time since she had met him, she saw something other than contempt in his gaze. There was confusion, uncertainty, and somewhere deep beneath those emotions, there was something that might have been respect. I was wrong, said. The words came out rough, like they were being dragged from somewhere deep inside him. His hands curled into fists at his sides. His scales shifted color again as emotions battled across his face. I believed humans were weak because you are small, because you are new to the galaxy, because your bodies cannot do what bodies can do." He paused and took a breath. "But strength is not only about muscles and size. What you did, building this weapon from nothing, proving yourself against everyone who doubted you, that is strength. Real strength." He raised his right fist to his chest in the salute of respect. It was the highest honor a warrior could give. "Private Park, I was wrong about you. I was wrong about your people. You have the heart of a warrior." Returned the salute. "I know," she said, "we all do." The months that followed were different. Graduated at the top of her class, the first human to ever achieve that distinction. Finished in the top 10%. Together with 3 other humans who joined in the next recruitment cycle, they formed the core of what would become the Coalition's first human special operations unit. Hope was studied by Coalition weapons engineers from 6 different species. They were amazed by its hybrid design. The barrel combined with alloys combined with human engineering principles created something that was better than any individual species could have made alone. The targeting system that had built from 3 broken scopes became the basis for a new generation of precision optics. They called it the Park Design Philosophy. The idea was simple but powerful. Instead of choosing one species' technology and forcing everyone to use it, the Coalition began looking for ways to combine the best elements of many different approaches: heat resistance, precision, human adaptability. The results changed everything. 5 years after her graduation, returned to Station Vega 7, but she did not return as a recruit. She walked through the landing bay wearing the uniform of a senior instructor. The new recruits looked at her with curiosity. She was small compared to the end. She did not look particularly impressive. But they had heard the stories. Everyone had heard the stories. Drill Sergeant was still there. He had never been transferred or promoted. Some said it was because of what happened with. Others said he requested to stay, to prove that he had learned from his mistake. When entered the training facility for the first time as an instructor, was waiting. He stood at attention and gave her the salute. "Senior Instructor Park," he said, "it is an honor." Returned the salute. "Drill Sergeant, I hope you have been treating the human recruits well." "Better than I treated you." He paused. "I tell your story to every new class. I tell them what you did, what you built, what you proved." "Why?" Smiled. It was strange to see a smile. Their faces were not designed for it. "Because they need to know that size and strength and thousands of years of tradition mean nothing if you do not have heart. And humans, Private Park, you have more heart than any species I have ever known." His first lesson to her new recruits was always the same. She gathered them in the training facility and looked at their faces. Human, other species too, now that the Coalition was expanding. They all watched her with uncertain eyes. "You are here because you want to become warriors," she said. "Some of you are big. Some of you are small. Some of you come from species with long traditions of combat. Some of you come from species that only recently learned how to fight." She walked to her desk and picked up a weapon. It was and mismatched and ugly. The metal was covered in weld marks. The stock was slightly asymmetrical. Hope, she had kept it all these years. "When I was a recruit, my drill sergeant told me I was worthless. He said humans did not belong in the Coalition military. He broke my weapon and threw it away." She held up Hope so everyone could see. "I built a new one, from scraps, from pieces that everyone else had thrown away as garbage, and with this weapon I set a record that still stands today." She set Hope down and looked at her recruits. "They will tell you that you are not enough, prove them wrong. They will give you broken tools and expect you to fail. Build better ones. They will try to make you quit because you are small or strange or different. Do not quit, ever." She smiled. "Because humans are not the strongest species in the galaxy. We are not the fastest. We are not the oldest or the most advanced." She paused. "But we are the most stubborn, and sometimes that is all you need. The recruits were silent. Then slowly they began to smile too. Behind on her desk, Hope sat waiting. It would never be fired again. It was too valuable now, too important as a symbol of what humans could do when everyone told them they could not. But its lesson would live forever. Build, adapt, overcome. And never, ever give up.